I think of it as from binge watching to binge listening to binge learning. That's sort of what my tagline became at one point in my career, because from binge watching at Netflix to binge learning at Coursera, my husband and I started really reflecting and connecting with what is it that matters to us, that we know matters to the world.
The book that I'm still reading, The Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown, she described there are more than 10 emotions, but two were very interesting for me. A sense of belonging versus the sense of fitting in. So true belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are and understand your values. And can you recall maybe some elements or some moments from your path? Hello everyone, welcome to Growth Mates. I'm Kate Suma, and if you have been here before, this is the place where we unpack inspiring, insightful growth stories directly from people standing behind the greatest products we are using every day. And before we start, a couple of friendly asks for everyone. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite platforms whenever you are listening or watching this. And share your feedback in comments, share anything that can help me make this show better for you, because this is exactly what helps me to create this show and share it with everyone. And today we have a very special guest, long-awaited conversation. I was very looking forward to that with Chetana. So welcome to Growth Mates. How are you doing today and where are you joining us from?
Thank you so much, Kate. And as Kate says, we've long waited for good reasons. So I am gracefully and happily joining from my home country in India right now, in the city of Mumbai. And I have been in California, United States for over 20 years. So very happy to join this reading conversation with Kate.
This is so wonderful. I'm in Amsterdam as always, so enjoying this quite gray weather that will be here for another 5 months.
True.
And today we're going to talk about something that is probably unique and different from typical topics we are discussing on this show. We will not talk about the product, growth stories and things like that, but we will talk about something personal, about your career, about your transitions, about like so many chapters that you passed through. So when I looked at your career, I was like, wow, so many big names and so many like important companies that everybody knows. So you started as a staff designer at Yahoo back in the days, probably more than 20 years ago, right? And then you were also in Pivotal Labs. It's like a big, huge consulting group. Then you were also VP of design at Script. And then you did a major step as a design director at Netflix that, you know, speaks for itself. And after that, you joined Coursera as a design director. And after that, you were also involved into different like mentorship programs, supporting designers and other people in tech through your experience and leadership. And probably you can tell better about yourself by yourself. So if I missed anything, just add to that and where you are today. So just to give a little bit of a recap of your career.
Thank you, Kate. That was a lovely summary. Yes, it really has been a journey. And in hindsight, while it was a journey of challenges and therefore opportunities, nothing short of learning every curve, every turn, every decision that I had to make. So my training was in graphic design. And as is the case from a design studio, to get myself into Yahoo was one of the biggest risky decisions at that stage in my career. But it was nothing but reward, even when I look back for those 7 years that I spent at Yahoo. And in terms of my career profile, I think of it as from binge watching to binge listening to binge learning. That's sort of what my tagline became at one point in my career, because from binge watching at Netflix to binge learning at Coursera, I found myself moving into a trajectory that I personally really care for. So you're very accurate in calling out. My day job would be about me sharing professionally what I know, but also learning on the job, both in terms of the craftsmanship of design, but also the leadership and the politics of design. But the nights and weekends was really where my heart was in terms of bringing that a full circle and being a volunteer with my favorite nonprofit volunteer organization called Interact Project. Again, 10 years, learned a lot, and eventually was able to offer back to them in terms of the value of design for the community that doesn't get to experience it as a career. So I feel very grateful to be able to balance these two sides of the equation that doesn't have to be depleted because you have a paid job, because you can adjust your 24 hours if you either have great mentors or the chutzpah to try it.
I personally believe that one of the most important jobs of anyone who is creating a digital product is to make the first user experience smooth, intuitive, and memorable. For that, we need to provide users with a friendly assistance throughout the whole experience, beyond just the first session. Comment AI is a user assistance platform that exists for the sole purpose of helping users. It provides a user-centric alternative to traditional pop-ups and chatbots. The first thing that I love about Comment AI is their Copilot. This is an AI support agent that can use AI to answer questions, perform actions for the user, or show them how to do some complex things with ease. The second thing that is incredibly useful are nudges. This is a great alternative to annoying pop-ups. Instead of bombarding users with too many messages, you can show them a proactive and relevant message that guides them right to the action. And you can get all of this within Comment AI as a no-code platform that product, support, and marketing teams can use to influence user behavior in a positive way while respecting their needs. Thank you again, Comment AI, for supporting this episode of GrowthMate.
Oh, this is beautiful combination. And I can imagine this as like an energy source that gives you the energy that you then spend in your full-time job that also gives you some energy back. So, it's like a balance. But one thing that really surprised me that recently you became a co-founder of something way different and like way beyond the tech world, which is like a seasonal pop-up experience connected with the community, vegan pizza. So tell more about that, how you ended up being there.
Yes. So this is the part of life where one wonders at a certain crossroad or trajectory in the career, is there really another ladder I need to climb? Is there another glass ceiling I need to hit? And it's around the last 4 or 5 years in the US that my husband and I started really reflecting and connecting with what is it that matters to us, that we know matters to the world, and we want to do something that touches both. We both love cooking and we both come from very different cultures. So you would see our kitchen at home being open-ended for invitations and feeding people. And my husband, who's a lover of New York pizzas, your classic cheese, tomato, what have you. When we came to India, we've now chosen to be in what's called an international community. And if the conversation takes us there, I can share what they do. But as part of this international community, we realized, again, for the love of pizza, how do we bring it to the community we're living in that's in India, but is going to be sustainable, is yummy, but brings the community together. So what Kate has beautifully called out here is called Pizza Wale. And it's our experiment at vegan, sustainable pizzas, which is just a means to the end being community and connection for people who want to learn about food, about organizing events, and about using the community to really make this world a better place.
Wow, it sounds like a dream job, for some people who are working in tech every single day, 8 hours in front of the laptop. They are dreaming of in 20 years, I will open my cafe, I will open my small restaurant. And honestly, this is also somewhere on my radar of the things I would like to explore and try out here in Amsterdam. And like how to bring the community physically, maybe even connecting it with tech, but still not being fully focused on that. And this is a beautiful way of doing that. So the topic that I was thinking about for a very long time, and I would like to talk to you especially about that, is how to actually doing these self check-ins to understand where you are and to navigate your career through these check-ins, basically. And it feels like you've done some job there. So you've been checking in with yourself at different steps in your journey. And this is probably why you decided to do something even beyond the tech world, beyond getting to another ladder. And one thing that came to my mind when I was thinking, reflecting on that topic was the book that I'm still reading, The Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. And especially one thing that she described there more than 80 emotions, but two were very interesting for me. The sense of belonging versus the sense of fitting in. And I will quote that because I don't remember the whole thing. So I will quote what exactly she is saying there. So true belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are and understand your values. Usually we want to be a part of something bigger than us. It's being you where you can be yourself, and they want you exactly the way you are. And fitting in is being where you want to be, which is a similar part. But people there don't care one way or another. It's being accepted or being like everybody else. So, and there is a difference, right, between these two feelings, being truly who you are, where you are, or fitting in. So, and looking back, and I think it's a very sensitive theme for me as well. You have worked in so many different cultures, companies, different sizes, from startups to consulting groups to enormous corporations. Probably sometimes you felt like you truly belong to these or not. Sometimes maybe it was more like fitting in. And can you recall maybe some elements or some moments from your path where you really felt like you truly belonged to the workplace culture versus you felt the opposite? And then we can dive into that.
Sounds good, Kate. Very apt and very reflective reading and sharing here. So thank you for that. It was very lightly taken at the time at which I chose to leave India, pretty much fight with issues where no one wanted me to go that far, but I was very clear for various reasons. And looking back, I did come back with many of those reasons addressed. But it was very lightly taken, the very point you're bringing up here today. After 23 years, you and I are talking about this, and it's not shocking to us. But I will say this to you, that in terms of a sense of belonging, in looking back, it was the organization where I landed up staying the longest that allowed me to go through the deep challenges of knowing who I am, but just not knowing how to belong. Because I didn't know the P of politics. I didn't know the way to be interviewed. I didn't know where to put my foot down, but I stayed long enough that I learned. And it happens to be Yahoo. And many of my Yahoo friends and ex-colleagues and network will know that we have built some of the longest lasting relationships from that experience, even though when I left Yahoo, I would have never imagined today in this conversation I would call out Yahoo. I did take enough risks. I failed. I wanted to succeed again. I learned. And through that, I figured who I was, where I need to strike to belong, and where I need to really coach myself. I left Yahoo knowing I had a longer list of where I needed to coach myself and learn myself than I ever did growing up in India. So after Yahoo, the journey was way more concentrated, decisive than the way I chose Yahoo, which was a shift from also graphic design to UX design. So that would be my answer to you for the sense of belonging. There were some other places over my career, especially as I moved into leadership and leading a team, but I will hold on to Yahoo for now.
Yeah, this is very interesting. And how you can recognize, like, let's say, probably it's relatively simple to recognize the feeling of belonging because it feels good, probably, right? It feels natural. It feels like you're in the flow. It feels like you're actually in line without trying to mentally think about that, basically. It's just supernatural situation. But the other thing, when you are fitting in, it's a bit ambiguous and it's hard to recognize probably earlier. It takes time to see, like, oh my God, it feels like over the last year I've been doing something or made decisions as a leader which is not in line with my true like values. But for you, did you have these situations in your career where you felt like that, and how to recognize this earlier? Because if you recognize this very late, it can be like, I'm looking back 3 years, I've been in the place where I'm not fit. I'm not belonging, but I'm just trying to fit in.
Absolutely true. And this is true even for, in my experience, a relationship. A relationship could be with the family I'm born into, it could be the partner I choose, or the friendship I invest in. And honestly, as I look back on your question, the moment I realized what were my triggers, because there's craftsmanship, there's my soft skills, there's my monetary requirements, there is my definition of success. I mean, you and I could write up a list of what it means to be, quote unquote, a successful designer slash design leader. So when I moved out of Yahoo and I started making those choices, shorter gigs, I started realizing what my triggers were in the workplace, first becoming consciously aware of those, then becoming aware of what or who or when those are caused. The biggest one, also for someone who came from a very different culture to the culture I chose very intently. And by the way, I do want to mention the one book that was my guide throughout this journey of the question you're asking me, called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. Absolutely, like, look back, and there are lines from the book that helped me when I realized one of my triggers was interviewing from a place of integrity, having a job description that promises A, B, C, and XYZ. But when you start the job, even your day looks different from what you thought it would or could. And this is me living the life of when I signed up for this job, because this is what we are looking for together. I love the word you used in the quote with Brené Brown, values. I would interview for jobs based on what my values were and knowing somewhat what the organization, and to be specific, what my hiring manager's values were. And then when I would start week 1, week 3, week 3 months, did I make the wrong choice? So it's really knowing those triggers. And mostly for me, culturally, it came from knowing the expectations and knowing when to draw the line between being who I am and how I need to show up. That line was invisible, and it took a long time to learn how to make it very bold and visible, at least to me, so that I can walk with it everywhere, from one meeting to the other meeting. And I got there much later.
Much later. Interesting. And when you had this moment, probably, like, I'm sure you're not alone in this situation, that after a month or a couple of months, it just happens that you realize, well, something is wrong here. And what would be your advice? What people can do in that moment? Because probably some people can be quite reactive to that and like maybe quit immediately or do some bold moves, but probably there is some other way to navigate through that. So what was your way?
That's a great question, Kate. And the industry that I grew up in terms of my career growth, different from my academic growth, does have today more than ever before some of the tips or tricks or list. You called out one of them, and I will give it a more specific name. It does have a huge value in having a mentor and knowing what you're looking for in the mentorship. Don't just do it as a checklist. I really underestimated it because I didn't know better, but over time I learned. So having a mentor who really is looking out for who you are and helping you connect with who you are. That itself is so huge between the day job and the evening life you lead or whatever you do on the weekends. The second will be knowing why you are accepting a certain job versus it may not be the job any of your friends or family will expect to ever see you. And you should be okay with it because you know it's a stepping stone towards where you want to go eventually. I made some very conscious choices in that area. And if you look at my LinkedIn or some of my friends who would see, oh my God, Chetana's at a sports betting company. Do we know her anymore? And the younger me probably would have been concerned and shocked about that judgment versus when I made that choice, I was able to handle the conversation and not let it demean the choices I made. And I share this with you because the clarity with why I did what I did would allow me to handle the ifs and buts and challenges at the workplace. Because those were there, but those were a bit repetitive, except for when I moved much senior and moved into more newer politics, if I may, in a fun way. But the mid-level leadership did have the same sort of opportunities and challenges, and I could handle them better because I wasn't letting my personal growth and preferences get conflicted with what was happening in my workplace. And so the choice for the workplace was rooted in where I wanted to go next.
I think we discussed that several times in the podcast, and a lot of people mentioned that whenever you make this kind of career decision, you make it not at the moment with the 3 months horizon that we just discussed, but you're making this with the horizon of X years. You're planning ahead. So 5 maybe years where you would like to be, and if this allows you to get there faster, easier, I don't know, more informed and experienced in a way. So this is probably something you are talking about, and it leads us back to the theme of checking in with yourself every moment and on your journey, and maybe accepting some sacrifices, right? So
Yes.
like the reality of a leadership role in a company with like a corporation and politics involved, it involves some sacrifices or some sort of trade-offs, basically. Yes. And it's another theme that I see emerging these days. So how to put that? I noticed the pattern that creative people, and designers are usually quite creative human beings, when they get into enterprises or scale-ups or corporations with slower speed, more alignment, more, things like that, they feel a bit not belonging, let's say. They feel like they are not utilizing their creative potential. They're super slow, and it's hard for them to adapt to this reality. And there are so many people like that. And I'm really like, how can I help you guys? So what can you do better? What can you do in order to feel good, but still probably not making these harsh, extreme decisions of like leaving their job and like, sacrificing maybe something that is probably beneficial for you in the longer term. But this is a very thin line, and maybe instead of giving an advice here, you could just tell about your story. So you've been there, you've been in Coursera, Netflix, big companies. You've been in managerial roles where I can imagine like what was that, and people are on the edge of this uncertainty. Like, I'm a creative person, but it feels like I'm not utilizing my creative skills here anymore. Should I stay or should I go? If you had these thoughts, even maybe personally, how you navigated through that?
Sure. And yes, it's true. Most of us, if not all of us, have been through that journey, especially if you're totally feeling comfortable with taking risks, knowing that the reward is directly proportionate to it. Now, in my case, it was a very conscious choice, starting with first the cultural growth I was yearning for, I was thirsty for, I was ready for. And I love the word growth here because I had to be willing to let go of a lot of what I grew up with to allow myself to grow into what I could become. The potential of who I was and who I can be was unknown to me till I went through this career journey in the US and also being in the creative field. You're spot on with that. Personally, for me, my definition of success for the initial years was rooted in my promotion and the being seen in the workplace, being given the right projects, the paycheck, learning from other colleagues what their paycheck is. The initial me did not know better, but that's not the sum total of who I am. But it would leave me unhappy or unfulfilled or even demotivated to do what I would love to do on the nights and weekends that we spoke about. So it's over time with some very rare one-off mentors and simple rituals that I had even as a child, and I negotiated it because of the workplace, and later I came back to it, that I started realizing that if something is making me feel unfulfilled or unhappy or challenged in the workplace, draw a pie chart, figure out what part is truly about the work that is not in my control, what part of it is in my control, and what is really me. What part of me is creating this situation because I have these lofty expectations and I feel everybody needs to work a certain way. Well, I didn't come here for that. But to be able to draw that pie chart and really, some of my research friends, I must say, were a huge help in this area because they had this methodology for how they ask questions and what questions lead to what answers. So I taught myself, can I be my own researcher? Can I allow myself to see myself in a different point of view because I just blew up this meeting? Oh, but did I really blow up the meeting? What else happened in this meeting? Can I stop back and analyze it? Once I started taking responsibility for myself at the workplace, before it would kind of make me angry or sad or demotivated, oh my God, Kate. Life was so liberating. And then as I had to develop that skill within me and train myself, a new set of friends showed up. My network at work shifted. I was in awe with how treating myself in a different way allowed me to treat myself in a different way at work and how that impacted my network.
Wow, this is interesting. So if I summarize, it feels like if you are taking responsibility, like extreme responsibility for your choices, your actions, reflect on that, research yourself versus, let's say, blaming external factors, feeling like they are wrong, I'm a right person here. It gives you a huge energy boost and like even impacts the way you communicate, impacts the way you make decisions, impacts the way you feel, and people who surround you in general. And you talked about mentors several times here, and I think it's also very important thing for yourself because you've been supporting uh, other communities who are trying to advocate for mentorship. Um, but in general, can you tell more about the value of that probably? And what type of mentorship we are talking about? In my experience, I see so many dimensions. Like there are mentors, there are coaches, there are psychologists. And in my case, probably personally, I always had to have probably three people from different expertise. So for a long time, I have a psychoanalyst and I'm into Jungian psychoanalysis.
Sure.
For periods of time, I had to attract particular coaches who could help me navigate through new chapters. Like when I was transitioning from IC to leader, it was a very big moment. Or right now when I'm trying to build a business. So these are moments when I had to attract coaches. But myself, I played a role as a mentor a lot of times in my career with my direct reports or with people who are now reaching out to me. Probably these are the types of external support I'm aware of, and I would suggest to balance and create a combination that suits you. But you're way more in depth into the mentorship part, so can you tell more about that in particular?
Sure. At a high level and in a global way, you actually have covered many of those profiles. The thing that I can share is time is helping so many areas evolve. So from the time that I just shared about my past when honestly it was very difficult to even know a mentor or find a mentor. There weren't organizations like there are today, uh, design communities or startup accelerators where it's online, it could be a virtual conversation that exists, and you don't go through the classical 4-year degree program, which is really what I knew and I really care for. One thing I'll share with you, besides the mentorship you beautifully called out, and they do exist now, they are also available on their LinkedIn profile, is that you could land up wasting your time if it's a checklist. So, what worked for me over time, because I couldn't find official mentors, so to speak, is I started becoming very conscious of when I'm meeting with someone, even in my workplace, who was my peer, or even someone reporting to me, or someone I was reporting to, sorry. What are the questions on my mind? What am I seeking in this conversation? And if that person lends themselves to it, can I build another relationship there? And I have to tune in with what that person needs or wants, because this to me used to be a huge service. I myself was very empathetic towards this, also because I came from such a different culture, that I would tune in with students who were looking into moving to design or taking design as a career, and I would create that as a symbiotic relationship. So over time, I did land up finding seasoned individuals with a legacy career who would just motivate me or blow my mind with something they would say in a meeting or an answer to my question. And I would either study them or follow them or try and connect with them in a casual way and sort of get the guiding path for what's next. But again, I think I'm again saying I was taking responsibility for connecting those. And there were maybe 2 or 3 times where I officially signed up for a relationship similar to the ones you're sharing. To be honest with you, in those times, I learned about the protocol and the methodology. I didn't really get what I needed because they were not able to tune in with where I was and who I was, in my case.
It reminds me about the fact that all the answers are hidden somewhere inside you. And in order to unpack them, you can use methodology, you can go here and there, but they are inside you. And I'm also quite, let's say, skeptical about particular frameworks and checklists. But if I'm doing that, I'm doing it with an intention to really, let's say, structure my thoughts. Sometimes I have a chaos in my mind and I do a test or something just to structure what I already probably know somewhere inside. But I just need to have some form of a structure for that. And if you go into mentorship or these relationships, so like coaching relationships, mentorship, like relationship with your psychologist, with this mindset that all the answers are inside you, you will not be treating them as well, like as sort of people who need to tell you what to do exactly or need to give you an exact answer, yes or no, And after years of practice, you start looking inside more often, and you sometimes at some point you don't need these even external people, or you treat them in a way of inspiration. For example, sometimes I say role models, but it's probably too much to describe it like that. I just need to listen to people, to their stories, and through these stories reflect on what's happening with me. And then it becomes another form of sort of mentorship, but it's not even sometimes talking directly. Sometimes I'm listening to podcasts with these people, right? And it's also a form of a mentorship in a way. And this is probably, I hope that for some of our listeners will be our conversation. And if they listen to that, they can reflect about their path, about their situation. Another thing I wanted to bring into this conversation today is that after many, many chapters in your career, maybe even during these big career steps when you were a director at Netflix or Coursera, quite an intense, probably working environment, how did you take time to really like, hold on, let's take a pause, let's see where we are? to recharge, to re-navigate, to reflect, to move on in a better direction, in a right direction, or wrong direction. So, but how was it? Because here where you are today, probably it gets more flexible, but while you were in a highly paced environment, what helped you to find these moments for yourself?
Sure. Very relevant. Very relevant any time of the ages and years, whether I talk to my grandmother or my parents. So I will share one thing with you uh, about the mentorship within and taking responsibility yourself. It's not so much about having all the answers or not needing external entities. My experience is it's having more questions and being okay with the questions. So I just wanted to add that. And within that realm, you're spot on with my desire to update my schedule and my way of living in a way that while I'm performing at the job and I'm exceeding beyond expectations, how am I rooting myself? What does my foundation look like? While I tried lots of different things, in hindsight, what really worked for me was probably not innovation for those of us who are in the digital world. I realized for me, being in the analog world, but being really focused and fulfilled was my happy place. And not just happy place to as a feeling, but to be able to step back and rewind. So that analog happy place for me was dancing. I have been dancing for a long time, from my training in Indian classical to then moving into my curiosity with other cultures, other music, to recently moving into Gurdjieff because I know nothing about it. So not only did it challenge me and it allowed me to be in my body, which honestly, Kate, I underestimated myself so much with the day job and the digital life and being in front of a computer or mobile or device, that my body existed in other phases of my life, but the movement and being with the music and my breath allowed me to reconnect with who are you, Chetana. So that was certainly one practice I started doing over a period of time, I think pretty much before Netflix. And then I am a yoga asana practitioner very regularly. So that's a given.
Oh, absolutely. And are you doing it for your entire life, or you started it like relatively recently,
Yoga
the yoga
asana.
practice? Yeah.
So yoga asana, the funny thing is, growing up in India, I was the quintessential child where I would have a controversy for anything anybody wanted me to do, like my mom or my family or parents. So yoga was a very popular thing in India. It's only when I moved to the United States that I saw the value in cooking or yoga asanas or chanting. And yoga asanas, I learned very deeply with some of the best teachers in San Francisco. And then that became a way of life for me because I had enough education and practice that I could do even a 30-minute sequence on my own. And I got so curious that I went and did a teacher training in being a yoga teacher, not because I wanted to teach, but because I was so curious to learn more about the practice of yoga asana.
Another thing that was mentioned by some of our beautiful guests, actually, Emily Compland from one of the previous episodes, is like curiosity is your main driver of change. And this is something that really reminds me about these changes in my life as well. You said about dancing. I started actually this month going every single week to different classes because I'm trying to find my style and what really belongs to me. Actually, yesterday I've been in one class that I didn't feel, I'm fitting in. I really felt that. And next week I will go to another class where I felt more natural, which is a dance hall. Probably it's a combination of like what you really like, what gives you energy, music, as well as movement, and where you can really like recharge. And it's my first year actually after I left Miro, my full-time job, where I spent like most of the time in front of the computer. I'm still spending most of my time in front of the computer, but what I can do now is like extra steps, extra pauses during the day. So I can go to the like sport class lesson in the middle of the day, or I can go to a cafe and work from there, just adding extra changes, or I can read a book. Like I have a physical book right now. I'm also diving into the theme of fashion. For some reason, I fall in love with the story of Dior, and I bought his autobiography, and now reading this, analog book, and it's so nice. It feels so good. But the yoga practice that you mentioned, it's a life-changing thing. It's absolutely life-changing. It's like probably somewhere close to my psychoanalysis practice with Jungian psychology. Like I was doing this in parallel for the last 5 years probably, and it really changes. It's the way of living, as you say. And this is like rituals. These rituals are very tightly embedded into your day. And after a long time of doing that regularly, I think it changes the way you see the world, the way you react or not react to something. But what about some bigger pause moments, let's say? So sometimes it's not enough. Maybe for people who are doing these practices for a long time, they have very balanced lifestyle. They don't need extra bigger pauses like, I don't know, a 1 month sabbatical or 2 weeks vacation somewhere in Maldives, or far away from the world and reality. But maybe it can be just something that helps you step back from everything, take a helicopter view or zoom out and recharge more intensively. Do you have anything like that in your routine, in your lifestyle these days?
Very much. And I think I'm known for that, both in my performance reviews and when I would interview. So 2 small
Uh-huh.
ones that I'm going to put out there for you, and then we can get to the big one. I am passionately a keeper of lunch time. I used to be one of those leaders who was not a fan of brown bags or lunch meetings. Even if it meant it's a 1 hour lunch break, my team and myself need at least 30 minutes where we can quietly eat or eat and connect what is not a work conversation. So this was an absolute no-go, at least in the Silicon Valley digital culture that I grew up and learned to live in from a workplace. The other was this notion of vacation having to be such a negotiation where you get X days of vacation and you have to work X hours and then you get so and so pay cut. I think it was after the first and pretty much by the end of my first job, it became a criteria for me that I will work at places where it's unlimited vacation, and I will design my own calendar where my pause is such that it allows me to play on. Because I am a player, and right now, that concept of being able to pause because I was on unlimited vacation and I had put a day in the month, especially as a VP and director role, where there was never a day in the month where it was okay for me to be away. But I had learned also from other managers and peers, block it, Chetana, and then move towards it. So that one day, Kate, would be a blessing because it would be unplanned. It would show up for me as a gift, and it would allow me to disconnect, re-centralize, rejuvenate the me in me, physically, emotionally, mentally. Even a work-related topic could go with me, but it would be rooted in what's bothering me right now, what's fulfilling me. And then next morning, I would be back at work. So that's a notion very different from taking a 1 month vacation and coming to India and then going back for 11 months, which I did for some time. And eventually I came to a place, as we were discussing, where pause to play on just became the album or the record or the soundtrack that I love now. So maybe making pizzas or doing something analog or a dance session or the way you're exploring dances. Can I go to this curiosity of mine with the intention of pausing as opposed to performing or succeeding? I say this way more easily today to you, but even few months ago, I would not be able to say to you that performing and succeeding is unimportant, because I see the value in that with the value of me pausing so I can play on.
This is very interesting. Wow, it's a mental model shift, right? One thing that you reminded me about, I had for a long time, actually for my whole time when I was in corporate world, and my path is different, of course. Like I
Sure.
haven't spent there 20 plus years, and I just at some point realized that I got what I wanted from that world, and now I want to experiment, right? So it's my path, and I'm building my products, like stuff like growth mates, service model, business, and it's very playful, as you've mentioned. But for a long time, when I was in the corporate career path, I had two to-do lists, of course. I had the work-related stuff and plans and roadmaps, personal to-do lists, etc. And I had a personal one. And what it created for me, it's created this sense of achieving even in my personal to-do list style. So when I had like an item of like read a book for 1 hour, it wasn't from the sense of like, or from the intention of taking a pause, relax, and just read without any expectations, without any time boxes, without any, goals beyond that, but just to read and enjoy the reading. It was an item in my to-do list. So what I did, probably it was too much, but I killed all to-do lists. Like I don't have any to-do list for personal stuff anymore. I have just things that I need to remember, like long-term reminders. But if I have an hour, I just trying to feel like, okay, what I want to do now. Do I want to read? Let's read. Do I want to walk? Let's walk. And it removed this sense of like another achieving or another like accomplishment, and checking that item in the list from my agenda. And one thing that probably you've mentioned, that you're still possible to keep with this flexible vacation days policy. I think it's beautiful. I wish like it would be available in every country, in every organization.
True.
We are not there yet. For me, in the last couple of years, what really helped is like, instead of these long-term vacations, 2 weeks, like recharging completely from one reality to another reality, I just took smaller pauses, like 3 to 4 days retreats. And like you've been in the probably yoga teachers retreats and things like that. It's something that in 3 days or 4 days helps to recharge, to play on then for the next couple of months. It just very condensed, but it gives way more energy than a typical style, like or like vacation. Yeah, and I think everybody has their own recipe for that, and like it's up to everyone to reflect and maybe think about what helps you in that way to recharge and to take a pause to play on for the next couple of months. And at that note, I'm so happy that we had this conversation. And as a tradition on this show, we have like a little lightning round. We talked a lot about this technical world, analog world, but still maybe to get back to the reality, we are in the digital world every single day. And was there anything like an app or digital product that made your life better recently, that helps you, do some stuff and give you some inspiration?
Sure. It's still in the app world because I'm very much a mobile user. And I would say, in this trajectory of getting more comfortable with listening to myself, I surprisingly use the voice memo quite a bit. Very
Really?
unlike me to do that. So nobody otherwise would know this. And within that realm, so far, Spotify seems to be the only app that's actually catering to my absolute diversified curiosity with podcasts or music, or even just finding things that can give me that sense of breathing and bliss and calm. So these are the two, to your question, I'm spending a little bit more time. And then Expensify, believe it or not. I'm learning a lot in what it means to live the choiceful life I'm living right now, and manifesting the power of good old money. So yes, I do like a lot of the choices Expensify makes in their design.
Interesting. We'll check it out. You also mentioned one book, like The Culture Map. It's been mentioned many times on this podcast. What are other things that maybe are connected to the topic of our conversation you would recommend checking out?
Sure. So besides all of this leadership and design and being in Silicon Valley, I've also been involved in design education for as long as I can remember, and that was my volunteer work. So two come to my mind. One is an institution in Oroville called The Last School. That's actually the name of the institution. And one of the books they have recently published is called Free Progress Education. And I'm at that juncture in my career and even my life as an artist and designer where I'm really curious about what does education need to look like with who you and me are today and what children are today, because they are not like the way we were children. So I'm really diving into this concept of free progress education. And the other book that's really motivating me, driving me is Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, A Way of Being. Every chapter, every sentence sometimes, Kate, is like this balance of honoring the maker in me, the artist in me, which I would shy away from saying that because I'm a designer, but I feel okay now. And then Rick talks about the spiritual path that we all have in us. We just need the courage to live it so that we can be it.
This is beautiful. It's been on my list the Creative Act, and now it's like the next item I'm gonna dive into. And last thing, as a tradition, because Growth Mates is something beyond just me, it's a community of beautiful, amazing, talented people. Is there anyone you would wish to see on this show someday? Maybe just one person. If you want to mention several people, it's also fine. And what would be your question to them? What you would like me to ask them and talk about?
So many questions, but we will focus on a dear ex-colleague and network and friend who has lived her career at the intersection of research and design and leadership, and her name is Stacey All. It would be an amazing journey for her to take this as an opportunity for growth in a very unique way, given that intersection for the conversation. So I will hand you that. And yeah, there are a bunch of people, but we'll come to that when you need it.
Absolutely. I will reach out to you for these connections. And this is exactly actually how I found you. I think David Honk mentioned you, but I think like a couple of people who I talked to mentioned you, and this is how we ended up talking to you, right? So I love this power of community and networking and Growth Mates that it gives me this opportunity. I'm just so grateful for that, and grateful to you for having this amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Kate, for the passionate, sincere, hardworking impulsion you put into this work and the patience with which you connect cultures and humans and conversations. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's an honor for me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the show on growthmates.club and get free playbook with frameworks and insights. If you find this valuable, please share it with your friends and colleagues and subscribe to the show on your favorite platforms to get new episodes. Let's keep growing together.